So I was discussing about this. If you don't regularly remove the milk from the mammary glands, which are active functionally, then this milk will remain there and it will increase intramammary pressure, and there is that feedback inhibitory factor of that lactation that will be there, and it's believed that the functional activity of those epithelial cells is then lost. So this rate of milk secretion depends on the available storage capacity in the gland, and implementing a shorter interval between the subsequent bouts of milk removal can increase milk production capacity. We'll be discussing this in details. An inverse relationship between intramammary pressure and the milk secretion rate that I have discussed. Pressure within the gland is highest at milking or suckling time. That's 35 to 55 mmHg. You see, the pressure is highest during the milking, since once we are milking the mammary gland cells, those epithelial cells which are secreting the milk, they are surrounded by those myoepithelial cells, and suckling causes the contraction of these myoepithelial cells and pushes that milk which is there in the alveoli or in the mammary ducts towards the cistern. So at a time the pressure is the highest and it ranges some 35 to 55 mmHg. So milk secretion rate is inversely proportional to the FIL concentration in the alveoli, as I discussed. If this increases the feedback inhibitor of lactation, the milk secretion rate decreases. So that's if you don't remove the milk. So a milk letdown is basically this milk ejection, or say the removal of the milk from the mammary glands. That is actually a neuroendocrine reflex. You see, it's a true example of neuroendocrine reflex. And that means where we have one arm that's a nervous and the other arm is an endocrine or a hormone. So this milk letdown is true neuroendocrine reflex, where the afferent path in this reflex is a nerve impulse from tactile stimulation of the sensory receptors on the teat during suckling. So when this young or the baby suckles the mother, you'll find that at that time, this impulses, say they pass through this vertebral, you can say through this that passes towards the hair centers in the brain via spinal cord, and then in the hair centers of the brain, it then is being received by the hypothalamus, and particularly those paraventricular and supraoptic nuclei. They get this information from the teats. So this is an afferent which is purely neuro in origin. But the you can say, in other words, what we can say, the efferent or the motor in this reflex is an endocrine. So once these nuclei in the hypothalamus are stimulated by the suckling or by this tactile stimulus of the teats, their motor action is a release of hormone, what we name as oxytocin. So the endocrine part of here in neuroendocrine reflex is secretion of oxytocin in this neuroendocrine reflex. So one side of this afferent is simply a nerve impulse, whereas this other, you see, its motor is a hormone, that's an oxytocin, 9 amino acid or nanopeptide that's being produced by the posterior pituitary, being actually produced from the two nuclei there in the hypothalamus, then carried to the posterior pituitary through axonal transport, being stored there. And once those hair centers are being stimulated by the sensory receptor, by the stimulation of sensory receptors on the teats, and then this oxytocin is being released. So this reflex is true neuroendocrine reflex, and this reflex is also a conditioned reflex. You see here the response to the stimulation of those teats by the suckling of the newborns is the secretion of a hormone. But that stimulus, you see, that response can be transferred to the other stimuli, what we need as a condition reflex. So that get transferred to many other, say, touch of the teats by the hands of the milker, maybe sound of the milk pans, or maybe the sound of those cans, or maybe the presence of the milker in front of the cow, or maybe the cow is taken to the milk, say, parlors, or where they are being milked. So all these reflexes, they carry on this impulse to the higher centers and cause the release of oxytocin. That's a conditioned reflex. So for this efficient letdown, cows should be subjected to the minimal stress, as stress can cause the release of the hormone adrenaline, which can counter the effects of the oxytocin. So here, in case of the animals, you can say, I'll find that this citrus is negatively feedbacking the ejection of milk. You'll find if an animal, cow which is lactating, and if somehow it is being disturbed during milk, it will, without milk, it will not even give a drop of the milk. That's because in citrus there is a secretion of adrenaline, and adrenaline is having a counter effect on oxytocin. So there is no release of the oxytocin, and the animal is not going to give milk or to eject the milk. So this oxytocin basically is a hormone. It acts on the myoepithelial cells, which are being those which surround the epithelial cells of these alveoli or mammary gland. So those alveoli which are surrounded by the those myoepithelial cells, which are smooth cells, smooth muscle cells, and once this oxytocin is secreted, these myoepithelial cells have the receptors for the oxytocin, and oxytocin causes the contraction of these myoepithelial cells. Myoepithelial cells are surrounding these alveoli. So once they contract, the material, the milk, the secretion of these epithelial cells, which we otherwise we call as milk, is in the alveoli. And once these alveoli are, say, due to the contraction of myoepithelial cells, when it gets contracted, it pushes its contents into the ducts, and from ducts to the cisterns, the gland cistern, and the teat cistern. So ultimately, on the other side, there is a relaxation of those teat sphincters, and it causes the milk to get ejected out, or it causes milk to come out of the gland. So this is how this milk ejection takes place. You'll find that there is a stimulus that is suckling, and the apparent path is that once the baby suckles the milk or these teats or the mammary gland, you see that stimulation of those teats. We have receptors there, the tactile receptors, mechanical receptors. They take this information from spinal cord to the brain system, and then ultimately to the hypothalamus, and that too in the hypothalamus paraventricular nucleus, and mostly this paraventricular nucleus and supraorbital nuclei, and then there it causes the secretion of that oxytocin, which is there stored in the posterior pituitary. Then this oxytocin is being released. Once this oxytocin is being released, it comes into the secretion. This is a hormone, 9 amino acid hormone, nanopeptide hormone. It comes into the circulation, reaches to the mammary gland through the circulation, and then it causes the contraction of myoepithelial cells. Myoepithelial cells, once get contracted, they push the contents into the cisterns and out of the gland. That what we name as milk ejection reflex. That is the simply how this milk gets out of the mammary gland. You'll find here in case of the let's say bovines, this is the suckling over here, and this information is taken to the brain, and in the brain you'll find that it will go to the hypothalamus. Then from the hypothalamus, ultimately from posterior pituitary, this anterior pituitary, this posterior pituitary, you will find the secretion of the oxytocin. This oxytocin will come and it will act on these alveoli. These are the alveoli. The myoepithelial cells are surrounding these alveoli, ultimately cause the contraction of those myoepithelial cells. These myoepithelial cells will push the milk into the alveolus or out of this alveolus into the ducts, and ultimately from ducts, you see, it will go into the cisterns, and ultimately from the cisterns you will get here the milk from these teats. So this is how actually the milk let down in the bovines is taking place, where the very important hormone, the oxytocin, plays a very good role in this ejection of milk. Then if we come to one more, say, this milk augmentation strategies. Is it that we can augment milk or we can increase the milk secretion in case of animals? So if it is so, what are those strategies by which we can increase the milk secretion or the milk output? There are 5 strategies which have been established that if you take care of these 5 strategies, if you operate these 5 strategies, you can expect increase in the milk yield. One is the manipulation of photoperiodism. You see, one important, that's the manipulation of photoperiodism. It has been well established that photoperiodism or photoperiod has a very important effect on the animals, maybe in the reproduction, in the milk yield. Even in poultry, it has been found that it has a very profound effect on the egg production. So if you can manipulate the photoperiod in case of the bovines, you can expect a good, say, increase in the milk. Similarly, if you can increase the milking frequency, so if you are milking a cow, say not twice, thrice, or 4 times a day, in other words, that milking frequency will increase the milk yield. Now, I will discuss about separately about those strategies. Then management of the dry-off period. So if you can manage the dry-off period well nutritionally as well as with the photoperiodism, you can expect a good increase in the milk yield in subsequent lactation. The nutrition, of course, nutrition is a very, very important. Unless and until you have a well-fed animals, you won't expect good lactation from them or a good milk yield from them. Then hormone manipulation. Many hormones are there. If you can manipulate them, if you can say supply them, or you can say treat them, you can expect say a good increase in the milk yield. If you go separately with these manipulations or say strategies, we'll see photoperiodism during that's a duration of light an animal is exposed to within a 24-hour period. That what we name as photoperiodism is a period in 24 hours day night. So that is the period, that's a duration of light an animal is exposed to within a 24-hour period. So if you are exposing an animal to the light means a good intensity of the light, 100 200 lux, the intensity of light is there. So that's light. If that light, if you are increasing that period within a 24-hour period to 16 to 18 hours, we name that as a long day photo period. That means long day photo period means you are exposing the animals to the light, to the sufficient light, to 16 to 18 hours within a 24 hours, and only to the darkness 6 to 8 hours. So that's a long day photoperiodism. Then short day photoperiodism, in other words, is when you provide only the light of good intensity to the animals only for 8 hours in a 24-hour day duration, and darkness for 16 hours in that 24-hour duration. That means it's a short day photo period. So increasing the light exposure from less than 12 hours to 16 hours enhances milk production by an average of 15% and dry matter intake by 6%. So it has been experimentally shown that if you increase that light exposure to the animals from 12 hours to 16 hours, so that's a long photoperiod. You are providing light to the animals, a sufficient perceptible light of 100 to 200 lux to the animals in their bars, in their bars, in their houses, then you can expect an increase in the milk production up to 15% and a dry matter intake by 6%. Similarly, long day photoperiodium increased circulating PRL, prolactin, in a number of species, promoted investigation of the effects of photoperiod on milk yield. So the reason behind increasing this milk production by increasing the exposure of animals to the light to say 16 hours in a 24-hour duration daylight period, you are expecting increase because it has been observed and established that prolactin gets increased. Prolactin is a hormone which is a lactating hormone. So prolactin, if you are increasing the prolactin, in other words, you are increasing the milking capacity of epithelial cells, you are increasing that genetic machinery of epithelial cells, even the proliferation of milking cells, and you will definitely expect more increase in the milk production. Also, that long day stimulates secretion of IGF-1 in the ruminants and may be possible for endocrine mechanism. So that insulin growth like factors, that's one. We have earlier discussed when we were discussing about the hormones responsible for this milk secretion and milk maintenance or galactopoiesis. IGF is one of the important factors, growth factors, which is responsible for galactopoiesis or the maintenance of the milk secretion. So long day has been shown to increase the IGF. That's one of the reasons that milk production gets increased once you increase the photoperiodism. Short days and melatonin replacement to mimic the short days decrease circulating PRL, suppress the IGF secretion. On contrary to it, if you are reducing this light to the 8 hours only, or you are exposing the animals only to the 8 hours of the light and 16 hours of darkness, or in other words, short day photoperiodism, it decreases the circulating PRL and also suppresses the IGF secretion. That, in other words, means it will decrease the production of milk. Since melatonin is one of the important hormones that is being secreted during the dark period. So bad melatonin is say negatively affecting the circulatory PRF and the IGF secretions. So SDPP, that's a short day photoperiodism, during the dry period is stimulatory to the milk yield during the subsequent lactation, and that the effect persists throughout the lactation. I've already discussed that one of the strategy in the dry period is, if you can manage the dry period and the animals, the bovines, you will put them in a short day photoperiodism. You are exposing the animals during dry period to only 8 hours of light and 16 hours of darkness. You are expecting increased milk yield in subsequent lactation. That's one of the important strategies if you can put the animals during dry period under short day photoperiods. So light intensity between 100 to 200 lux is enough to suppress the melatonin, which naturally increase at dusk. So that's a visible light with which you can expect, say, if you are increasing the light intensity during dark periods to 200 lux, you are increasing the light period. So less than 20 lux is applied for 12 to 16 hours a day in the last 21 days of the dry period. That enhances the milk yield. Means when you are providing the light only 20 lux, that means it's almost the darkness. So it's not the perceptible light. So 20 lux is considered to be a darkness. So if you are producing, you are exposing the animals to the dark periods of 12 to 16 hours during the last 21 days, as I already discussed, it will cause during the dry period, it will enhance the milk yield in subsequent, lactation. You can find in this, diagram. So how this illumination in the forms is there, well, illuminating light sources are there. And if you are maintaining this, uh, say 200 lux, 150, 200 lux in a form, you can increase in the light period. And you can thus expect increased circulatory, this increased milk yield. Milking frequency, again, one of the strategy is that milking frequency. If you are increasing the milking frequency, say 3 times a day, you'll find that that's a very important strategy that has emerged, because we have seen that Dairy Herd Improvement Association that recommends and then records an increase in the milk production with 3x 12 to 16% when compared to the 2x. Means if you are milking an animal only 2x and other animal at the 3x, means 3 times a day, you'll find that 12 to 16% increase in the animals which are being milked thrice a day as compared to the animals which are milked at twice a day. So both cows and heifers milk production of 4x udder halves increased by 10.4% relative to the 2x udder halves. So in the same animal, it has been experimentally shown that in the same animal, if you are say milking one of its cow, this half of the udder, you have the halves, the right and left halves. If you are say milking one half 4 times a day and other half only 2 times a day, you find there is an increase in the milk 10.4% in the half that has been milked 4 times a day. That's very important. I mean, this finding. Some reports have indicated an association between the frequent milking and the decreased somatic cell counts. Frequent milking may improve the mammary health. So actually, the funda behind this increasing this milk yield through increasing the frequency of milking is that if you are removing the milk, you are not going to give a chance for FIL to act there. At the same time, when you are milking, you are increasing the prolactin, because at every milking, at every suckling, the this prolactin gets released. So that causes the increase in the milk production, and then subsequently you will find more this milk production. And at the same time, if you are milking frequently, you are reducing the intramammary pressures, and you are not expecting any breakdown in the tight junctions. This way, you also increase the mammary health. And then also these concentrations of growth hormone, IGF-1, oxytocin, and PRL, they also get increased when you increase the frequency of milking. That, in other words, causes increase in the milk production. So if your milk is not removed, or if you are, say, reducing the milking frequency, no stimulation is there, no PRL is there, so increasing intramammary pressure will be there, activation of sympathetic nerves will be there, so there will be a constriction of those blood vessels to the mammary gland, so blood flow will get reduced, so decreased availability of hormones and the nutrients to the gland. Ultimately, the rate of milk secretion will get decreased. This is if you won't remove the milk from the mammary glands. Or in other words, if you increase the removal of the milking, this will all go reverse, and you'll find more secretion of milk. So manipulation of the hormones. So one of the important strategy is administration of BST. That's a bovine somatotropic hormone, or the growth hormone. It has been used by many, the developed countries, say Canada or the USA. They are using the injections of BST that causes the secretion of milk increase to a maximum. So near maximum response is obtained at approximately 40 mg of this BST per day. The BST formulation currently approved for use in the United States is prolonged release of N-methanol BST that is marketed by Posilac or Monsanto Co. St. Louis. that was approved by the FDA in the November 1993. So it has been used there in the many countries, probably in some 50 countries it's being used. And the dose is 500 mg per cow every 2 weeks. So treatment should be initiated after the peak lactation at 60 days post-calving at or near positive energy balance. The regulatory agencies of more than 50 countries have reviewed safety concern and approved in the use of this BST in increasing the milk yield in the bovines or in the cows. So that has been the strategy, but in India, we are not using the strategy. Probably there are so many social ethical concern with the use of the BST. So it's not being approved by the Indian government to be used in this lactating animals for increasing the milk production. But the countries which are being using this BST, they get there are reports that the use of this BST causes increase up to 15% of milk yield. So glucocorticoids at the physiological levels, they are also galactopoietic. At high doses, of course, they are inhibitory. But at low doses, they are galactopoietic. They increase the milk production or they maintain the production level. And in other words, they increase the milk yield per lactation. So similarly, thyroid hormones are galactopoietic in nature, but for a short period only. Again, so administration of thyroid hormones for more than 7 weeks had no effect on the milk yield. These are all the studies. Estrogen administered in very low doses is also galactopoietic. However, higher doses have inhibitory effects. The combination of estrogen and progesterone is more inhibitory than the estrogen alone. So these are the hormones. If you can manipulate these hormones, you can increase the milk production. As dairy animals age, milk production per lactation increases, suggesting that the mammary growth continues with successive lactations. Persistence of lactation is hormone regulated. Both milk synthesis and secretion and milk removal are integral processes for lactation persistency, as we have discussed earlier. So this is how you can say during milk yield, you see this initially after day 16 when it's a peak of this. The activity is also very much increased, the mammary growth is increased, all those activities. Then this is that persistency, or that's the second phase of this lactation, that's a decline phase. So if you are giving the BST, if you are increasing milk frequency, if you are increasing photoperiodism, if you are using antioxidants, you are expecting some, let's say, better results in, or you can say the decline in the milk yield, the rate of decline, you can improve on that, and you can expect much more production during per lactation, in other words. So if you are declining this rate of decline in milk production during this period, so these are the strategies which you can use to make this decline rate less and expect more production per lactation. But if you are having, say, those somatic cell counts more, toxins, citrus, incomplete milking, blood flow decreased, if all these things are there, so you won't expect increase in the milk yield. Rather, you will find that this persistency is less, and there's a rapid decrease in the milk yield, and you will expect little less milk yield during lactation or per lactation. And similarly, if you can manage during the dry period, which is innovation and this involution of the mammary gland, if you can maintain that photoperiodism low or short photoperiodism during this period, you will expect more say lactation in the subsequent, more milk yield in the subsequent lactation. This is all about the lactation. So I have come to the end of this physiology of lactation, or the lactation physiology, in which we have different lectures, and this comes to the end of this physiology of lactations. By this, I will probably stop this presentation over here, and I will end over here and take leave from you. Thanks a lot.